Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. We have a fight, Joseph Parker and Junior Fa, December the 11th at Spark Arena in Auckland, New Zealand. So this is an event that's being put on by Duco Events and co-promoted by Ludabella and Matchroom Boxing. So there's a number of things that I want to step through. I've already got a video up on the channel. This was a day before the announcement saying that terms were agreed. I went through a number of things there. There's also another video up on the channel from the press conference. That's just like a full highlights package montage of Joseph Parker, Junior Fa and the respective teams saying this, that and the other. This video is more reacting to some of the statements that, one, are in the press release because there's some interesting stuff there, and two, some stuff that was said at the press conference that is worth weighing in on. But first I would sort of start off on a slightly lighter note. The promo poster was quite interesting to me because when I first saw it, and this was my first take, I thought it looks like someone must have poured hot oil on them and they're on fire and that they're sort of escaping the situation that they're in. So, you know, it's on screen here now, so keen to get your take on that. Next point, Junior Fa, he looks a legit 6'5", and this is from the face-off, and here's a photo as well, sort of next to each other. Joseph Parker is listed at 6'4", but that's probably quite generous. He looks definitely at least 2 inches shorter than Junior Fa. But it sort of confirms to me what I'd already sort of suspected the game plan is likely to be for Junior Fa. He's the bigger guy, he's got a reach advantage over Parker of a few inches, and also he's a couple of inches at least taller than Parker. So he probably is advised to keep it long, box from the outside, and he actually does have some decent skills. If he can sort of thwart Joseph Parker to some extent, maybe he can win some rounds off the back of the jab, keep him on the outside. Junior Fa, he also acknowledged that his record isn't the greatest. It's not on the same sort of level and the same sort of caliber names of Parker, and I thought actually that was quite a refreshing admission because that question was asked and he was quite honest about it. But he said, look, it's up to me to prove myself, and he believes that he is better than Joseph Parker, and now he has the opportunity to put the hard effort and graft in training and prove himself on the night. Okay, next issue. David Higgins, the advisor and manager and former promoter of Joseph Parker, he said that this fight is happening at the right time. And he sort of said, you know, sometimes fights can be sort of pushed well past their sell-by date. But he said this one is happening in their primes to WBO-rated fighters the right time now. For me, though, I still think it's a bit undercooked, that if Junior Fa had have had a couple more wins on his resume of note, that would have built the fight quite nicely. But because of COVID, obviously, they've sort of needs must, and the situation has dictated that they fight each other now because other opportunities at the moment, it seems to be slim picking all around. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit underdone, but they are actually dubbing this fight, and it's sort of quite careful wording. They said it's with both boxers inside the WBO's top 10 world rankings and in their prime. This is undeniably New Zealand's fight of the century. So I guess what they're leaning on, and to prove their sort of statement, is both these guys are ranked in the WBO top 10. But as we know, sometimes that can actually not be a reflection of where people are really in the world rankings and such. But if I was to sort of say, in recent memory at least, in terms of fights that have been had in New Zealand, Andy Ruiz Jr. and Joseph Parker, a much bigger fight. But that wasn't necessarily a fight between two New Zealanders. It was a title fight, but certainly a bigger fight than this one. And I think undeniably the number one fight between two New Zealand fighters, the biggest event and still the record holder, is David Tua and Shane Cameron from 2009. But I guess, like I said, the caveat that they have with their statement on this is that it's two WBO top 10 world ranking rated fighters. So make of that what you will. It is a fight and they're trying to sell it. It's a PR pitch to the casual fan, etc. And I'll be interested to see what the sort of interest in the fight is going to be, because it's not something that everyone's really sort of been calling for, this fight. Not everyone's been baying to see it, whereas Tua Cameron, it was very different, very bitter. Over a number of years, people wanted to see that fight. This is sort of foisted upon the New Zealand public, but I think they will be able to whip up some interest. There is Joseph Parker, Samoan descent, and Junior Fa, Tongan descent, but also not a lot of sporting events right now. But it is pay-per-view, pay-per-view. So maybe that will limit the interest to some extent, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But it is going to be on a new broadcaster, bearing in mind Joseph Parker's previous fights in terms of the events in New Zealand, the pay-per-views, etc., have been broadcast on the Sky Sports platform. That's Sky Sports New Zealand. But now Spark, which is part of a telecommunications company, that is going to be the broadcaster. And they do have some experience with big events. They had the rights to the Rugby World Cup in 2019, so I have no doubt they can do a good job. But it is going to be pay-per-view in New Zealand. So the broadcasting details, it's pay-per-view in New Zealand and on DAZN elsewhere, but it sort of specifies just global broadcaster, DAZN, and others to be confirmed. But the New Zealand side, and this is going to be interesting for New Zealand fans and maybe a bit annoying, pay-per-view will be priced on a tiered model with super early bird pricing of $39.99. So that's somewhere about £20 or so. Available from today, increasing to an early bird price of $49.99 on 27th October, and then reverting to the final pay-per-view cost of $59.99 for viewers who purchased the day before or the same day as the fight, the 10th and 11th of December. So that is from the press release. So a 3-tiered system, very interesting. I mean, maybe some of this is about trying to bank as much revenue as early as possible. Perhaps this is going to sort of fund the undercard and such, and they need to have a bit of an indication about the popularity of the event, where it's tracking, to help with the management of cost. That was just something that I thought right off the bat. But in terms of the cost, if you book now, if you're intending to watch, $39.99, that's pretty much what I was expecting. But $59.99, I mean, that's in line with Joseph Parker's most ever expensive fight in New Zealand, which was the Andy Ruiz Jr. title fight. And bear in mind, for this one, there's just an WBO regional strap, the interim Oriental title, and that's something that Junior Fa currently holds. So it's not a lot on the lines in terms of relevance, in terms of belts. But these guys are number 2, or number 3, I should say, for Joseph Parker, and number 6, respectively, for Junior Fa. And I would note, and this is my next point, I've seen a narrative in the media, and this has sort of been pushed a little bit by David Higgins, where he's being a little bit economical with what he's saying, but the media is running a narrative I've seen quite a bit of, that the winner of this fight is effectively going to get a title shot and next. And there's no guarantees of that at all. It's a little bit spurious for the media to be sort of pushing that barrow, but there have been a lot of media that have gone as far to say that the winner will get a fight against Alexander Usyk should Anthony Joshua vacate the WBO title. As we know, though, at the moment, Usyk is going to be facing Chisora, and then he's looking to have his title shot against Anthony Joshua. I mean, who knows when that would be, some point in 2021, perhaps. There's a lot of balls in the air about when stuff would happen, but the winner here, there's no guarantees that they leapfrog Daniel Dubois at number 2. I'll say that now. I mean, Frank Warren's got an in there with the WBO, and he's got his man to number 2. I'm not sure if that's going to change anything. Matchroom, this is their first event that they're involved with in New Zealand. Eddie Hearn sort of spoke about that in a video comment that was supplied by Duco. They're looking to have more involvement in Australia and New Zealand in 2021, and this is sort of their first foray into New Zealand. They're looking to open an office in Australia in 2021. That would have been open by now, but has been delayed. And Hearn also, he says that he would like to be at the fight if he can, but maybe he's sort of forgotten that Anthony Joshua, he'd be fighting on December 12th. And once you actually take away the time difference, so the fight might be in the 11th here in New Zealand, but that will be early morning in the UK. So he'd have to basically catch a plane and go straight to the UK. I mean, I just can't see it happening. It'd be pretty tight just to begin with. He'd be traveling for basically a day or whatever the flight time is. Doesn't seem feasible to me. But there was one thing that really caught my eye, and I should have brought it up a little bit earlier. Remembering Joseph Parker earlier in his career, and this is, he was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, had spoken about only wanting to fight till he was about 30 or 31. But he said in a press conference that he wants to become a champion again, and even unified, and by the age of 35. So I'm taking that to be that he's committing himself to the heavyweight division, the sport in general, at least for another sort of 6 or 7 years, bearing in mind he's currently 28 years old. And some people might look at that and go, well, 7 years, seems a long time, for him to potentially become champion again. But, there will be some people saying if he wins this or his next fight, he could get a title shot in 2021 or early 2022. But the way things are with mandatories and that sort of thing, the way things are clogged at the top end of the division, next year is out pretty much completely. So it looks like 2022 onwards is more realistic. So at least it's a realistic target, as opposed to saying I'm going to get a title shot early next year, which is completely unrealistic. And a number of heavyweights have been sort of carrying on with that sort of nonsense recently. But interesting that he sort of pushed the goalpost out. And I guess if he is still, relatively low wear and tear, he's not taking too much punishment, he's still getting good paydays, obviously financially and for his family, it's a good thing for him to continue to be in the sport. If his love is still there for the sport, he wants to train, wants to put the hard yards in, and he's got the passion to continue and sort of chase a title, all power to him. And previously, the whole retire by 30 or 31, a lot of people had sort of said that feels a bit early, but obviously he's changed his mind and had a bit of a rethink on that. But what did you make of it all? The comments from the press release, the press conference, the Spark pay-per-view starting at $40 and ramping up to $60 by the night of the fight. Drop a comment loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.